Hi, everybody. I am Jody Grunwald, and welcome to Today is the Day Changemakers. And today I am so excited to have someone who is a change maker, an inspirer, a motivator, someone who is crushing the status quo and everything he does, and someone who is a mentor to many people in the community, and also someone who is totally a straight shooter when it comes to almost any topic, but definitely about current events and social justice. So I am thrilled to welcome Jeremy Grunin, the president of the Grunin Foundation and also a partner for Grunin Holdings as well, right, Jeremy?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, Jody.
Good afternoon, Jeremy. Thank you so much again for being a part of this. I just want to read a little bit about your bio real quick. And you have a great bio. I mean, it doesn't even do it justice, not just these few sentences, but you are a proactive grant maker focused on economic growth at the Jersey Shore, and that through Grunin Holdings, you specialize in development and management of commercial real estate, as well as investing in third-party commercial ventures. However, your bio is missing something, I think, just my personal opinion. When I was looking through it, you are like either leading several boards or you are sitting on several boards. So I feel like you should have board leader or board member extraordinaire listed as part of your bio. It's incredible.
Yes, I think currently I am on 18 and I am chairing 2 right now and co-chairing another, the steering committee for the New Jersey Arts and Culture Recovery Fund. So yeah, I keep busy.
Yeah, that's like a whole other full-time job. I can't even imagine how you keep that all straight. Oh my goodness, your emails. That's awesome. So many of you, in our neck of the woods know who you are and what you do. But, my hope is, of course, that lots of people outside of our neck of the woods are going to hear all of the, the podcasts that I am doing and listen to the YouTube channel. So could you share a little bit about the Grunin Foundation and the pillars that you cover in the work that you do? That would be
Sure. So yes, we are a proactive grant making organization. What that's code for is please don't send us an application or ask us for money. We like to come find you. That being said, we are very much transparent and out in our neighborhoods. It's not that difficult to get our attention because, aside from my board work, every member of my team sits on their own boards and committees. And so we're out throughout Monmouth and Ocean County pretty regularly. We focus really on 3 large pillars. And that is number 1, our philanthropy, which is supporting the arts, supporting education and healthcare in Monmouth and Ocean counties. But that's all under the umbrella of really economic excellence at the Central Jersey Shore. Our second pillar is around capacity building for nonprofits. And again, that kind of ties to rising tides lift all boats. If we build capacity for our nonprofit partners, they can do better for the folks that need them, and that will clearly improve the economy in Monmouth and Ocean counties. And our third pillar is around ecosystem development, and that sounds really high powered. But really kind of when we kind of peel back what that means, it's being able to mobilize efforts of the for-profit community, the nonprofit community, our local legislators, and those that can have an impact on law, and bring all of them together around collective impact to make change, specifically in Monmouth and Ocean counties. So that's kind of where the foundation is. We've recently just gone through a full kind of strategic development process, strategic planning process to kind of put a finer point on the work that we do. And that's where we landed. And we rolled it out about a month before the world shut down. And then, of course, we had to pivot to some newer things that have certainly taken stage over the last 9 months.
Absolutely. And so just curious, arts is, obviously I know that, but arts is definitely something of importance to you. Is there a specific reason that you decided to really focus on the arts?
So when we looked at, first, let me be the first one to say, I can't sing. I don't play an instrument anymore. And I certainly can't draw or paint. I have none of the skills necessary to be an artiste. I probably could deal with spoken word, but that's about it. But we see the arts, when you look at thriving communities that are the most successful, typically they possess a strong arts and culture angle. Meaning that the arts is a way to open up minds, to inspire creativity, to make people think differently. Folks that today are young children, as you know very well, who work in the arts, don't necessarily follow a career in the arts. They don't necessarily become professional actors or professional musicians, what have you. But what they do is they build a creativity in their mind that allows them to be great advertising executives or project managers or creative thinkers to solve the problems of tomorrow. And so we see the arts as super important, not only in creating thriving communities and a community rich where people want to come and see and do, and then of course spend and eat and buy. Right. So that's part of the arts. But the other angle is around the arts and how it intermingles with education and how important it is to be part of that. Just as important as a young person learning math or history is having exposure to the arts and being able to open their mind in a different way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We see that firsthand at the Zach G. Uploader Kids Foundation, and we're lucky to work with you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but that is definitely what the arts does for kids in our community, for sure. It is so much more than a lesson that is about singing. You did mention
Right.
you played an instrument. I'm just curious, what was that instrument?
So I played the piano for a number of years, but I'm not going to lie. It was one of these things. My mom was a pianist as a child and actually played well into her adulthood. We always had a piano in the house, and my mother wanted me to be a great musician. And I had piano lessons every week. Either someone came to the house or I would go. I remember going to Freehold Music in the Ocean County Mall, where I would get my lessons. And then I'll never forget, and my dad still has it in his house today. He has this hourglass. It's actually a 45-minute glass. This big golden. It's not made of gold, but it's gold, whatever it is.
Right.
Hourglass, 45-minute glass. And my mom would sit me at the piano, and she would turn the glass over and say, "Now you have to practice for 45 minutes." And I'm not going to lie, as a child, I hated it. I didn't like, I was good at it actually,
Right.
but I hated it. And so as soon as I was able to, I moved on from that. I wish I had stayed with it in retrospect. She was right, because I think, it's a super cool, there's no better party trick than to sit at the piano and start playing something beautiful. Get a lot of attention that way. I will also admit to the fact that I also played the cello for a few years. And it was more a way for me to attract women, because women love cellists, right? No, not at all. I played the cello, and I was in orchestra, and I didn't love that either. I think that was really my mom's way of trying to make me get into like weightlifting, that I have to carry my cello from event to event. But so I did play those instruments during my youth.
Hey, we have that in common. I played the cello for a year myself, so I totally.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did.
Oh my God, the cello must have been twice your size.
It was. I was in fourth grade.
Oh my goodness.
It was awful. Yes, and I had to walk far for school because in New York back then there was no buses. Oh, it was miserable.
I was like, why couldn't you make me play the violin? Look how tiny that little thing is. I could carry that.
I did that too. I played the violin the next year, and then I moved on to the flute. So but don't have to play any of those instruments. It's all gone. Can you remember any piano though? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I do a mean chopsticks. No, I don't remember. I don't remember any of it. I can still read music. Not that means anything.
That's great.
I still remember like Great Big Dogs Fight Animals, and all that, which is like, and FACE, FACE. I remember all the acronyms for all that, but I couldn't play anything anymore.
Well, that's funny. Yeah, it's so nice to play an instrument. I can't remember anything, which stinks too.
Yeah.
I'm in that world myself. Just want to go back to the impact that you have on the organizations that you work with, and you have had to have seen over the many years that you've been doing this, some incredible things happen. How many organizations do you think, and this is a guesstimate, that you've supported over the last 5 years?
Well, so supported is a little bit of a tricky question, because support comes in a number of different ways. Support comes in the most conventional way that we think of, which is a check, right? And we all know no money, no mission. So that's incredibly important. But we like to think of ourselves as more than just writing a check. As you know, you deal with my team regularly, and Heather is an incredible resource for the community. We like to be connectors. If it doesn't fall within our mission, but we know others that it does, that we want to make those connections. So that there's that kind of a support. And then of course, there's just like the capacity building work we do with our Catapult Your Capacity series, where we do lecture series and workshops, and those are literally attended by hundreds of people, hundreds of organizations every year. So, financially, in the most conventional sense, I'm going to say we've probably supported close to 100 organizations over the years. We have some that we continue to fund for year after year. We have some that we funded at one point and haven't funded again. And then we have new partners that we're discovering every day, because there's so many folks doing great work that we want to be part of.
And I have to go back to, excuse me, what you said about your team. You have the most amazing team. You've definitely put an amazing team in place with Heather and Kelly and Jackie. Amazing. And all of them, mentors to so many in the community. And I can vouch for the fact that you can call and ask questions and never feel like you're a bother. Although you give me like 3 minutes, but it's okay. I know my time. Don't worry. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. But just kidding. But it's,
I learned sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I learned in my for-profit life that, I think that there are leaders that believe that they always want to be the smartest person in the room, and they want to make sure that the people who work for them are no threat to take their jobs. And those people realize very limited success. And then there's people who say, I want to surround myself with people better than me, because the more smart people working on something, the more work we can get done, and better, the higher level. So I always try to surround myself with people smarter than me and better than me. And fortunately for me, that's not that difficult. But I certainly have in Heather, Kelly, and Jackie, I have 3 amazing young women who do just an outstanding job to make me look okay.
No, you do a good job all by yourself. No worries there. It's I just think that what you just said is just so important, because there are a lot of leaders who are out there who lead a certain way, where they do have to always be the one who is right. They don't want to share, there's no servant leadership in their company. Right. They don't believe in that. And I feel like, just from the outside looking in, I feel like I see that within your organization, and how you all lift each other up to do better and be better. And I think that's really such a credit to you and your dad, who are doing such a great job with that. So
yeah, and my dad's the same way. He's very quick to say, that he doesn't have the answers, and if somebody else does, then he's open to it. And look, I think, he's of a different generation, clearly, and I think in today's world, if you're not open to changing and open to listening to other opinions, then you are going to get left behind, and he doesn't allow that. So much credit to him.
This is kind of a good segue to something else I wanted to talk about, which was, I don't know, when we met 3.5 years ago, it was July, 3 years ago. And Noel is the one who introduced me to you. I was working for what was then the community YMCA, and is now the Greater Monmouth YMCA. And we met for lunch, and we were talking about, you were like, okay, so what do you need? Right. And that was when we met, and we talked about the why, and we had a great conversation. And that was just like a week before that, we had finally, on the side of the Zach G. Plotter Kids Foundation, we had finally gotten the okay from the state that we could be a 501c3.
Right.
And I was sitting there thinking, do I say this to him and ask his opinion, because he's such an expert in this field? And do I say, hey, what do you think about this concept? Do you think it's going to work? And knowing that I could be crushed if you didn't, because I'm asking someone who could potentially help us, and someone who could give me great advice, if willing. And, one of the things you did that day, and I don't think you know this, but it was life-changing, was that you were like, sounds good. Send me the information when you have it all together. So when you talk about what we were just saying about the importance of the words that you say and the way that you talk to people and treat people, no matter who they are, it's amazing to give them encouragement. And you'll also be a straight shooter, as I said in the very beginning, to say, nope, that's not going to work. But that's what's great about your organization and the fact of what you do. And then we kind of moved on from there. But the power of words is so important. And I just, I think that you've helped so many individual organizations and individuals here in our area. Do you have anything that you would share with maybe some leaders who think very differently than you?
Well, so, and my background before coming back to work with my family 8 years ago was, I had run 40 health clubs. I was running 40 health clubs for New York Sports Club. I had run districts for Circuit City, for a company called Electronics Expo, for Toys R Us. for a number of different companies. CompUSA, a lot of them out of business.
I remember those all.
And so when I first got into leadership, and I was at 25 years old, I was the youngest store manager in the history of CompUSA. When I got into leadership, command was really the way that most leaders led. And you go do it, right? And there's no why. You don't need to know why, because I'm the boss. At that time, I didn't understand that, and I didn't want to work that way. And also at 25 years old, when you get into leadership, you can't work that way, because then you're just the snot-nosed kid who has most of a team that's older than him, and you're not going to. So you have to learn how to be collaborative from Jump Street and let people understand that they're part of the solution, right? And that we all work together. And so I've always I don't have a lot of skills, but one of the things that I've always been told I'm good at is perspective. Meaning that you can look at how someone will take a new initiative or an idea, or how you say something, how one person can see it a certain way and somebody in another role may see it a different way, and how to translate it in ways that's digestible for folks across the organization. So I would say the one thing that's super important is around perspective, and being able to understand that certainly today that words matter, what you say matters, how you say it matters. And people are going to interpret what they interpret, and you need to be cognizant of that. But the two other tenets that my parents always gave me, and I kind of have taken with me, is one, my mother, I think, always used to say, act as if everything you do is going to be on the front page of the Asbury Park Press, right? And you're going to have to defend it, right? Or how's it going to play, right? And if you don't feel good about doing something, then you shouldn't be doing it. Right. This was, of course, at a time when newspapers actually mined for stories and everything ended up on the front pages of the Asbury Park Press. So I always think of that one. And the second thing that I always think of is, life has a strange way of coming back around on you. Right. And just because you're in a position today doesn't mean you're going to be in that position tomorrow. And I used to always say, when I would loan a friend money or give somebody, when I try to be helpful to someone, and they would say, well, let me pay you back, let me do this. And I would say, no. I just want you, when I'm unemployed and I need a couch to sleep on, you're going to let me sleep on your couch for a week. Okay. Because I'm sure it'll hit me at some point too, because we all end up there. And I've been there at times in my life. I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I worked hard for a long time, and I still work hard. But I think you have to keep those perspectives in mind, because we're all people and we're just born into different circumstances. Some of us can't get out. And we have to understand that we need to be kind to others, because they didn't choose their lot necessarily.
No. And management by fear, I've unfortunately experienced that in my lifetime, and it just doesn't make for a good way to get the best out of your employees in any sort of a way. No,
and I do the same thing. We my ex-wife and I parent in the same way, right? Like I would much rather tell my kids that I'm disappointed in them for something than ground them for. I think that by saying that you're disappointed, it should be more powerful than taking their Xbox away for a week, right? Like that's not. It's not. One is punitive and one is relationship, and relationship is the most important thing in leadership, and frankly in philanthropy. Right. It's very easy. The power dynamic is heavily skewed towards who has the money. Yes. Right. And to effectuate real change, you need to be able to say, I understand that I have the money, but you have the know-how, and working together, let's figure out how we can make impact.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the other things you shared with me during our meeting was that you didn't graduate college.
Yeah.
Right? That was one thing. And I have to say that was another moment that it was like, wow, because obviously when you look at leaders in the community, society has made it that if you're a leader in the community, that means you have a bachelor's or a master's degree. And which I don't talk about a lot myself because there's the stigma about it, I didn't finish. So when we were sitting across the table, it was kind of an interesting moment for me, because I'm like, yes, you see, people can be very successful without the degree. And I had to fight very hard in the organizations I worked for to get the roles that I did. And I was blessed because they believed in my work ethic and the things that I was able to accomplish in those roles, both at the American Heart and American Lung Association. I was the only one without a bachelor's degree.
Right.
I had to prove myself, and which I did. And I was hired for lower than most until I proved myself. And then I was making more than most. And training teams across the country. But my question to you is, right now, there are people in organizations that might have started in a role that didn't need a bachelor's degree. They worked their way up. They now have, the company believes in them. They move them up. They got let go because of the pandemic, right? They couldn't sustain their roles anymore. They go in to the system, right? There's Indeed and other systems, and they cannot click the button that they have a bachelor's degree. That means they cannot move through the process to apply for a job. And I feel like, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. I feel like society has made it that's the end all be all, that bachelor's degree. And to be honest with you, my kids are going through college. I told them, hey, it's 16 years when you go to school, right? That's what we say as parents. But what about some of us who didn't do that? What advice do you have for those people? And I just want to add to that, and to the employers who make it so that it's so mandatory that they might be missing out on some really good people.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I laugh because I always tell people I was in the square root club in college, and then they say, well, what does that mean? I said, well, that's where the square root of your GPA is higher than your actual GPA, and that means you had a decimal point before your GPA. My parents literally tried to bribe me not to go to college, as my college-age son is now walking out with his friends. Go RU. Anyway, so they literally offered to buy me a car if I wouldn't go to college, because they knew that I wasn't really. I mean, I did well in high school and I had good SATs, but I didn't really care about it. And then I got to college and I went against their advice, and I did horribly. I didn't pay attention. I didn't go to class, and I left. I will tell you that to this day, it's one of my biggest regrets. Not because I feel less of a person, but I feel like it would have been easier. There were jobs I didn't get along the way that would have changed my path because I didn't have a college degree. I remember specifically an interview with a very large retailer that would have been a very great job. And I got past the first interview and they said, you're amazing. I want to pass you on to our district manager. Said, can you just send us a copy of your college degree? And I said, I don't have one. They said, we can't move you on then. And, I went through the whole, I call it like the Billy Madison thing. I'm like, let's do let me write an email. Let me run a team meeting. Let me go through a P&L, let me show you, let me do a walk through the store and then put me up against your best leader. And if I don't kick their butt, then don't hire me. And they said, that's a really great idea, but we're not doing that. Anyway, now, and my kids, I have one in Rutgers and another one about to start Rutgers in the fall. I see the value in college if you're a college person, if you're going to get something out of it, if it's a means to a different end. One of my two kids wants to be a physician's assistant. One of them wants to get into trading, equity trading. You need degrees for those things. And you need higher training levels to understand the ins and outs of that. But what I would say is, that the majority of jobs to require college degrees, to me, is not only short-sighted, but it is also, frankly, it is also not in keeping with today's society. Meaning, education is a barrier, right? For BIPOC communities, particularly, right? The fact of the matter is, my kids are going to have a much better opportunity at a college degree than if I grew up in Camden, New Jersey. Right, to a single parent family who was working 3 jobs to make ends meet. And so does that make that person any less qualified or any less intelligent or any less able to do a job? Of course not. But we require these degrees. It is a form of structural racism at this point in our country, and needs to be addressed. Moreover, a college degree, the dilution of our college system is such that really, if you have the money, you're going to get a college degree. Right. And so what does that mean? What does that make you better at anything? No, not necessarily. On the other end, we are big believers in the trades, in vocational educations. You can do incredibly well as an electrician.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Incredibly well as a plumber. right? As a carpenter. There are so many opportunities out there. I, for one, I'm a perfect example. I should have gone to community college because I wasn't ready for college. And I may have determined at community college, geez, this is not for me. I'm going to work. Right. But we have a stigma even to community college. Like for some, it's like, hey, I failed. I ended up at community college. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Everybody goes on their journey in a different way, on a different level. Ultimately, I could sit here at 47 years old and tell you, do I think I would have had any difference have I had a college degree versus who I am today? I don't think so. And I don't think anybody that talks to me says, wow, that you talk like someone who doesn't have a college degree, because what does that even mean?
Yeah.
It means nothing.
No.
So anyway, that's my diatribe on that.
No, but it's important. And, when I worked for the Lung Association, one of the prerequisites as a hiring manager, I was hiring then, was that the person coming in here, I didn't have a degree, but the person I was going to hire was mandatory that they had a degree, not my saying I was working for a national organization. She was an attorney. She had a degree. She had an amazing degree, but she couldn't fundraise.
Right.
You could have a degree in geology, but as long as you can click that you have a degree, they don't care. So I'm glad you shared all of that, because it's something that is it definitely gets under my skin a little bit, being in the same place. Like, come on, it's about experience.
The one degree everyone should have is the one degree that nobody gets, and that is a degree in sales, right? Because every job, every career, everything you do involves sales. Right? Whether you're selling yourself to a customer and why they should use you, whether you're selling a good or service, right? Whether you're selling an idea, right? You need to know how to sell, right? Because that's what this world is about. It's about marketing yourself and putting yourself in positions where you can win. And sales is the key to all of that. And I was very fortunate that I was raised in the School of Hard Knocks in commission sales, because that was the best education I could have possibly had.
That's my whole background, is sales.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That should be something that they do in high schools almost, on how to sell yourself. I agree with that 100%. Just kind of going back to the nonprofits right now and what they're dealing with during this difficult time as well. If you were an executive director for a small to mid-size nonprofit, what would you be looking at doing right now to make sure that you could be sustainable?
Yeah, I think the number one thing that especially small and mid-sized nonprofits need to be focused on is their fundraising model, right? The reality is that primarily for a lot of organizations, the way they raised money was through galas, through golf outings, through wine tastings, through anything they could to bring people together, charge them for a ticket, sell them some raffle tickets and some auction items, and make money that way. Well, guess what? 2020 has shown us that's not a foregone conclusion that you're going to be able to do those things. And the organizations that have had to pivot to away from that and figure out alternative revenue streams, a lot of them have struggled. The ones that have thrived are those that have been able to go to their donor base, have developed relationships, and can say, you know what? I can't promise you a gala where people are going to honor you this year. What I can do is promise you that we're going to do amazing work for the kids, for the elderly, for the veterans, for whatever group you're dealing with. And I would ask that you continue to support me during this time. So the number, and I think we have to realize that 2021 is not going to be that much different, right? Like even in our current world of vaccination, as we start to roll these things out, people aren't going to be fully vaccinated for, we're not going to see a real impact here until the summer, right? And then who knows what next September holds, right? Or next October when we close back down from a temperature standpoint, we have to go back indoors. So the number one thing I would be looking at is my fundraising model, how I cultivate my donor base, and then how do we operate in a virtual world, right? Do we have to go back to office space? Do we have to go back to conference rooms? Do we have to have board meetings? I got to tell you, we've had the best attendance at board meetings ever during COVID, because people just log on from their computer, from their bed, right, from their desk, right? Like you don't have to drive somewhere and gather somewhere. Gee, that doesn't seem like an awful idea, right? Oh, and by the way, I can actually go to more meetings in a day, and we typically do, because I don't have to drive all over God's green earth, right? So, you have to look at how you're doing your work. And the last thing is, the murder of George Floyd this year, shined a light on an issue that we have throughout our country. And if your organization has decided that you came out with a statement, that said you're against racism, right? Or a statement that says everybody's the same, which is such an awful comment. It's like so throwaway. And you think you're done with your racial equity work, or because you added a Black board member or a Latino member of your team, that's not solving your problem, right? This is a world where social justice and racial equity is a front burner issue, and should be and has to be, and things need to change. And if your organization isn't putting that front and center right now, then you're missing the boat, and you're going to be behind.
So, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's on the list of things I want to talk to you about, which was, I know you're doing some training for your team, right? They're going through some training right now. And can you share a little bit about that? And some, I've heard you speak, and you've had your own aha moments as well through this process. And if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about a few of those as well, maybe it'll help others have some aha moments as well.
Yeah. So my kids and my best friends make fun of me now because I'm reading, as they call it, Jeremy's reading chapter books now. But I've been really I had my own moment where I realized that I wasn't doing well enough. And I would tell you 2 years ago, if you had talked to 2 years ago, Jeremy, it was very different than today, Jeremy. I didn't realize what white privilege meant. And I drew a moral equivalent because I said, well, I'm Jewish. I went through my own stuff. Right. And it's not the same. It's just not even close to the same. And I can't, as a middle-aged white man, put myself in the shoes of, I said I was good at perspective, but I've never lived that life. I've never walked in those shoes. And I'm very fortunate, to have a team that, I don't want to say we're like-minded, because we have different perspectives for sure. But I think we're all, I think that we are all cerebral enough and self-aware enough to say, yeah, we can do better, right? Yeah, and we're not. Our first reaction now isn't one of defense, but rather one of like introspection, and let's figure out what we need to do. So, we as a team, we just hired a consultant to do work within our organization to make us an anti-racist, to take us down the path of becoming an anti-racist funder. Because it's important. It's important that not only do we have that mindset, but that we do our grant making through that lens as well. The only way that our grantees will change is if we start asking them the hard questions and making them do the work because they should, because it's the right thing to do, and understand that, not to say that it's that it's a quid pro quo for funding, but we're going to be more apt to fund organizations that are working on it, right? That are doing the work. So that's number one. Number two, we started taking the Geraldine Dodge Foundation, who we work with on a number of projects, offered up for the nonprofit community an opportunity to join a 5-month training with a group called YMCA Consulting, specifically on becoming an anti-racist organization. So myself and Heather, my executive director, every 2 weeks we have a 2-hour session with pre-work and post-work. In our group, we have 70 on the phone or on a Zoom, and we have these discussions, and we listen to speakers, and we do this work. So we've been doing that. My whole team, with an organization called Race Forward, did a 6.5-hour seminar last week, specifically on racial justice and social equity. And finally, I sit on. I'm actually on the diversity, equity, and inclusion work group for the Council of New Jersey Grantmakers. I am the white male representative, and I was invited by my peers, people of color, who saw me as someone who could help make a difference. So that was kind of an honor to be asked to do that work. And so we meet pretty regularly, or doing work on behalf of the grant making community in general within the state. And then I sit on a couple of other DEI committees. But the other thing that we're doing is we are working on a project right now with Monmouth University specifically, but with all of the higher learning institutions in Monmouth and Ocean County to develop an addition to the curriculum or a certification type academy program for both in-service teachers and pre-service teachers throughout Monmouth and Ocean County to teach them how to deliver anti-racist curriculum. Because the problem starts in our schools. When I went to school, when I learned about the GI Bill, I learned that it gave opportunities for returning veterans to buy houses and get financing at a very, very competitive rate so that they could start to build their family wealth, right? What I didn't learn was that wasn't actually available for Black returning veterans, right? Because it wasn't. And they weren't allowed to buy in the same neighborhoods, and we redlined the heck out of it. I didn't know, nobody told me that we desegregated cities in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. I didn't know that. Nobody would have taught me that. That only comes from, digging deeper into understanding what we have done in American history since the first slaves were brought over here. And how Jim Crow laws worked and just the awful things that we perpetrated against, portions of our society in a way that went completely unchecked for hundreds of years. So it's important that we teach our teachers how to teach this, and that we're teaching kids not only through Black History Month, where I learn about George Washington Carver and Rosa Parks, but it shouldn't be Black History Month. It should be we learn history all throughout the year correctly, right? So that's some of the work we're doing, and it's a lot, and it's hard, and it's painful, and there's times when I'm miserable. Because I realize that it hasn't been right, and I haven't done well, but I think we're getting there, and we'll continue to work on it. And it's become an important part of the work we do day to day at the Grunin Foundation.
That's just, all of that is just so incredible. And thank you for leading the way for so many organizations. I hope that those that listen to this will also follow suit and reach out to those different organizations that you mentioned and do the research. It truly is incredible. So thank you for sharing that. We should have been having these conversations when we were kids in school. And it's just amazing how we got here, all these years later. I don't really know either.
Well, when you think about it, it's very difficult when you're in we could look at America as a caste system to a large extent. It really is the third caste system in memory. One being the most famous, which is India, where they actually have a caste system. The second would be Nazi Germany, which created a caste system. And we have our own caste system, which is really, really insidious because it's not spoken about. But it's very difficult when you're in the ruling class, for lack of a better term, to say, why am I in the ruling class? Who chose me? Maybe I shouldn't be in the ruling class, right? Like, that's not something that people naturally wake up and say. But I think when it's brought out to the light like it has been, well, you got to talk about it now, and we got to understand it, and we got to fix it. Like, understanding it is just a tiny part of it, because it's really about the actions.
And we're all responsible for sharing it and being a part of it. And we have, like you said, we have kids. We've got to train them differently at this point. They're way younger than us and have a better opportunity for a real understanding and to share it with their friends and do things differently. So we're in a good spot that way. At least if we can look at a positive, we can at least help the youth at this point and make those changes in our process. So thank you for that. And then my last question for you, and I thank you for your time so much, is if you knew then what you know now, two things, what would they be?
If I knew then what I know now. First of all, I just noticed that plant makes me almost look like I have hair up here.
I did not even realize that.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. Two things that if I knew then what I know now, I think number one, I would have, I think I would have been kinder to people throughout my life. I don't think I was never a mean person, really. But I had my moments, right? And I've said things that now I look back over the years and I cringe, right? and that goes in a number of different ways, from acceptance of of sexualities, right, to acceptance of different colors, which is silly. I've had my moments, and I've had along the way, I've had my epiphanies, right, where I've said, where I've made friends, right, and I've said, wow, what was I doing? And it makes you feel, it's painful. So that's one thing that I would definitely have done differently. The other thing is, I think I would have really worked out more in my life and been in better shape, because I'm a mess now. And I wish I would have taken care of myself. But we all tend to live in the moment, and definitely we measure out our risk reward, to a large extent. And we say, yeah, I know this is bad for me, but whatever, I'll be fine. It's the thing to do right now. And I think that mentality is damaging for a lot of people. I also would have read more. I think I didn't work on my own education, and I used to joke that I'm the farthest thing from an intellectual there ever is, and I still believe that. But I wore it as like a badge of honor, when I should have said, the only way that we improve as humans is by acquiring as much knowledge as we can. And of course, the best way to not repeat history is to learn it and to understand how it happened and why it happened, and not to let it happen again. And I didn't do that until, unfortunately, later in life. I hope I still have a lot of runway in front of me, but we'll see. So.
Well, I what I think is just so amazing is that you sit there and you can be honest with yourself. And a lot of people, they're not honest with themselves, and they live in this, I call it the cruise control society, just keep going, same speed. They don't have any forethought or any back thought, and don't want to make changes. And, and things that you mentioned, you can work on now. And I think it's just wonderful that you're in touch with all of that. And a lot of people aren't. So that's a really great thing to share with those who are watching this, that, pay attention to what you're doing, what you're thinking. Every minute counts. We all hope we have a lot of runway in front of us, but we don't know. So today is the day, right? That's the name of this podcast.
Yeah. Listen, I see your Instagram every day, and you've turned into you're workout girl now. You're inspirational quotes. You're all about self-improvement now. So hats off to you. Because I'm hoping to get there at some point, but I'm still not quite there, but we're working on it.
But yeah, well, you know what, you're doing great. You're doing great, because the one thing that you're doing is you're helping to empower people and teach people. And you know what, that doesn't take a degree. That takes heart and work and a thought process, that you want to make a difference in this community. And that's what I think is so beautiful. So I thank you for that. I know many other organizations thank you for that. And yes, I hope my inspirational stuff is not corny.
No comment. No, I'm joking. It's good. It's
Jeremy.
I haven't muted you yet. That's a win.
That's right. And you gave me more than 8 minutes and 30 seconds.
I know.
That's another huge win. So I really do appreciate that. But no, you've always been a great supporter, and I really do appreciate all of that you give to me. And there's actually a Plutter Kids Foundation. And just, you know what, I say to you as a leader, keep doing what you're doing, because you're inspiring other people and helping other people grow. So thank you for that. And I'm just gonna end with my quote that I say every time, which is, today is the day you cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So thank you so much again, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Your insight and all of that wonderful information. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.